In this video, we're going to make a landscape material to be applied to our landscape. This will allow us to paint different colors from this material and create different effects throughout our landscape. So to get started, if you are in landscape mode, you're going to want to switch back to selection mode. And I'm going to go to my content drawer. I'm going to start to make a new material. I'm going to call this material my landscape material. Open it up. Landscape material uses a node off of the base color called landscape blend. This node doesn't look like much at first, but what you start to add to it are layers through these array elements. So I'm going to add one right here. I'm going to open it up. And I'm going to make one called grass layer. Actually, we'll call it grass mat over here. Make another one. We're going to make we'll call it ground mat. We'll make kind of like a brown dirt one right there. I'm going to minimize these as I make them. Cool, go into here. We'll make a snow mat. You can see that the landscape layer is adding that name with pins for them after I make each one. I'll add one more right here, and we'll add a water mat right here. Perfect. Now for this first example, we're just going to use constant 3 vectors to make these materials. So I'm going to make this one right here. It's going to be my grass. I'll make it kind of a green color. We'll do kind of a dark one right there. This one's going to be my kind of my dirt color right here. Go over to here. Looks good. Go over to here. Open it up. This is my snow. So I'm going to go into this kind of like white with a little bit of gray right here. Make some space. And for this final one, I'll make it kind of the regular way. I'll search for constant 3 vector. These are the same constant 3s we've been using for all of our different material making. We'll keep this nice and spread out. There we go. Perfect. This is water. Water is going to be blue. Looks good. I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to hit save. Now this material, I am going to apply it to my landscape by, with the selection mode being turned on, select my landscape, go into its details, and find the detail labeled landscape material. I can then search for my landscape material and apply it to the shape. Now, generally, this makes this kind of crazy looking, shiny black material. It's like it's taken over by something throughout this landscape. But this material is going to allow me to have a canvas that I can then paint onto. Once I have this applied, I'm going to go to my landscape mode, and I'm going to use the paint tool to start to paint this landscape. Now, if done properly, because the material is on the landscape, you should have access to these right here. So these are all of the different layers that I made in this previous step. In order to use these layers, we're going to use the paint. We're going to select our brush size, all the same elements from before. If you go to click this, Unreal tries to tell you something is wrong. I go to click, and it says, hey, this layer has no info assigned. It's doing its best to tell you you need to complete one more step. And that step is by creating layer info for each of these materials. So click here, weight blended layer normal. You can leave the name what it is. It'll make this object saved into that landscape. And that first one is now applied to my entire landscape. I can repeat the process for these other ones. Sounds good. Sounds good. Perfect. So I have all these layers to now use on my landscape. To use them, I simply click on it, and then I can start to paint. The first time you use a material, you can see it kind of has to build what that color is going to be. But I can paint this just by clicking and dragging and selecting the material. The tool strength and the fall off will help you kind of define how dark it's going to be, possibly immediately. I can make the brush size very large like that. If I don't want the tool to go from green just to fully brown right there, I can just do a little bit more of a kind of transition by having the tool not be as strong. And you can see the fall off is changing how that goes from a center point to the outer rings of the applied material. And go to my snow. I always think the snow being kind of on the peaks of this and make my brush a little bit smaller right here, kind of go up onto my peaks. And again, the first time I use it, it's going to build that material's values. Maybe only my upper peaks have the snow on them. Perfect. You know, I can go then to some water, and by simply applying water, it can make it start to look like it is some sort of river or body of water. I'm going to up the strength right here. Perfect. Now often the water will be combined with either some sort of plane that has a water material onto it or some sort of water volume to be used. But as you see working through here, it is starting to create a little bit more dynamic of a landscape than what we previously had. I sometimes like to, don't really like that. Go down here, make it smaller, and try to have a little bit more control as we're kind of working through here. Still causing some problems there. All right. Sometimes with this material, what you'll want to do is take its roughness and put a constant onto here. And I could play around with some of the values within here. So it's going to make like a really smooth material right here. Rebuilding those shaders. It's got a different effect to it. Kind of looks almost like plasticky a little bit. Or I could have it be a little bit more rough on here. So I'll hit apply and save. And I'll rebuild. And that roughness, I think, looks a little better than the overly smooth material. And that's how we can use simple colors to make a landscape material and paint it throughout a landscape that we created.